Hey, in this episode of Franchise Secrets, I'm joined with my business partner, Jeff Herr. We talk about some of these interesting conversations we've had with emerging brands and brands that are going to become franchisors here shortly. We talked about ROI, like a lot of fees are charged and franchisors should be charging fees. But as a franchisee and as a franchise buyer, you should understand the ROI that you get on those fees. And we broke that out into some detail. I think franchisees, franchisors, and franchise buyers will find it helpful. Hope you enjoy this episode of Franchise Secrets.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
Dude, we're live.
Yo,
It's on.
love it. My whole life is live, dude. I live in live.
We've had some fun calls. The question that I had for this is like, if we were to start over as a franchisee, like what did we do right? What did we do wrong? Like what would we do differently? But I think before we get to that, daily we're on calls with brands that aren't a franchise yet, or some of them are, but they're always super interesting conversations. And I remember it was one that we were on yesterday. We were going through the call and listening because we always like to have these calls just to listen, to understand these founder stories. And all of a sudden, this guy, I can't remember the exact numbers, you probably do. He's like, yeah, it's $800,000 and $1 million and then 3 million,
Right.
6 million, and we're like, whoa, that's
crazy.
Just, it caught our
Yeah, it
attention.
catches
We're like,
your eye.
tell us more about that. Remember that conversation?
It's great, man. I mean, there's nothing greater than a founder's story. I mean, it kind of just really kind of tells you about the brand, kind of like where they came from. I mean, this particular call was really interesting because he's, some people try to just kind of go up and to the right. But that's not just growing a business is like a swervy line, man. And this guy was a perfect example of having to constantly pivot the business. And he just had luck at like pivoting in the right direction. Very entrepreneurial, but very innovative. I mean, not very often look, what you want to see is like compounding annual growth rate. If you can kind of see that year over year of 20+%, that gets pretty exciting. Eventually, the law of big numbers can kind of kick in. So, you start getting into the millions, like growing it by 20% is pretty meaningful. I mean, we're kind of at the final stages with a particular brand right now that went from 3.2 million to 4 million. And this year, that founder thinks that they can do 5 million. Like, what's after that? But this guy yesterday, he got his business up to a run rate of $3 million a year and then boom, doubled it in the next 12 months and went from 3 million to 6 million. Which is, you don't hear that every day. I mean, we get excited if we can, once again, if we can kind of see that year over year growth rate of like 20%. I mean, that's exceptional. I mean, 10% is fantastic, but to double from 3 million to 6 million is pretty interesting.
He's also mentioned multiple times, when we're on these calls, these founders, they're an open book to us. Now, if they were franchise buyer facing, they probably would not be an open book like that. But, he mentioned a handful of times, I'm coachable, I'm teachable. There's a lot that I don't know. I know a lot about this industry. Franchising is new to us. I want to be around people like you guys at Front Street to help us see around the corners, to understand what we don't understand, to be that guide to grow a meaningful brand. Do you think that openness of being teachable and coachable, not knowing they actually, admit that they don't know what they don't know, is that okay to do when you're talking to buyers as a franchisor, if they were talking to buyers, how open should a brand be with that piece of it?
I mean, obviously, when it comes to rules around financial performance and whatnot, and you can't talk about anything that's not in the FDD. But take that aside, right? Like things that you can disclose or be open about in either a one-on-one or a group way, I'm all for it. I mean, my opinion, like when it does come to financial performance, if you can't share it, then you shouldn't be franchising. Because if you can't share it, then that probably means that maybe the math isn't working the right way, or it's not impressive enough. Like obviously franchising, you want to have a proven business model, but a big piece of that is strong unit economics. And so I believe that if you have a compelling story to talk about in unit economics, then share it all. Share it all, because that means that you can discuss a lot of different pieces around the unit economics because it's disclosed. And so if you kind of take that into other categories, I really liked, first of all, I like that business category. We on the last podcast, we kind of talked about, what are some of the exciting categories we're looking for this year. He fit into a category that I think is going to be pretty hot, which is, business to business service companies. We're very keen on that category. But what was really interesting is he was really, really open, and that's refreshing. Sometimes we talk to founders and they kind of hold back on a lot of stuff, and you get into a third meeting, a fourth meeting, a fifth meeting, and you start to peel back the onion and you're like, I wish I would have known a lot of this like hours ago, right? And he was really forthcoming. I mean, look, he's had some bumps and bruises growing the business over the last 20 years, and he has had to pivot. And as I mentioned earlier, like his pivots were in the right direction, and he's kind of cutting his cloth into something pretty unique, and there's some real white space in his category. But he had no problem on the first call just kind of saying like, here's some big mistakes that I made, right? And here's what I did to fix them. And it was really refreshing. That's the kind of founders you can work with, because they're just open. And, like, look, when we talk to founders too, we try to make sure that we're very clear on the first call that like coming out of the blocks and trying to get traction in franchising is nearly impossible. And it's really, really hard. And I mean, we tell them like the first rule of franchising is don't franchise your business. And we tell them like, you have to think, when you are launching, this is such a critical stage. Like you have to think like loss mitigation first. Like that's hard to tell a founder that has a dream to get to 100 franchisees, 500 franchisees, 1,000 operating territories, that like you're going to have to walk through some glass for a couple of years. And so it was great. I mean, it is wonderful. Like when somebody can really kind of talk about the pain that they've gone through. And so to answer your question, yes, when you're talking to potential franchisees, that type of transparency and honesty in the storytelling, I think translates great with franchisees, because that's really how it's going to be for them as well. You can't act like you're handing them magic beans from the beanstalk, and all they got to do is plant them in the backyard, and they have a business that's going to act like an ATM. That's just not reality.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Zs and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my franchisee mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
Even founders that have had success in franchising before and they go on to start brand number 2 or brand number 3, they know that there's going to be bumps in the road, that not everything is going to go smooth. Franchisees who have been a part of emerging brands that have been great, turned out to be great brands, as they look back, they're like, there were bumps in along the way to get to where they are today. I mean, I've talked to multiple franchisees who are friends of mine at Orange Theory. And that's one that a lot of people see as a success out there, because it has been. They've had successful franchisees making money, good exits multiple times. But it wasn't just, easy. It wasn't just, spend the money on the franchise fee, put a sign out there, and customers come in. The best operators, with that one in particular, they had amazing grand openings. They had pre-sales and amazing grand openings. And that's one of the things that you and I talk to our brands about a lot. And when we talk to, those are our portfolio brands, but when we talk to brands that might become some of our portfolio brands, we talk about that. What are you doing? How do you have what's in place to have a good ramp for a grand opening for franchisees? And then we start talking through that and give them a lot of help along the way, even with FDDs, Jeff. As you were talking about that item 19, we left a call with somebody. They're going to send us the item 9 or the FDD of what they have today, which is not done, almost done. But, you offer to take a look at it. And I know you'll have 10, 12 like meaningful points for them to go back to their attorney. I mean, like, hey, why don't you tweak this, change that? Because that FDD is critical. I think anybody out there, franchisors or franchise buyers, if you want to look at solid item 19s, go check out 2 of our portfolio brands, Go Glow, and it's an airbrush tanning concept, and then Magnolia Soap and Bath. And you just go to the state of Wisconsin website, type in state of Wisconsin FDD, and you'll see how to pull it up. Type in the brand name, and you can see some of these, what a really good, robust item 19 looks like. And then compare it to other brands out there, and you'll see the lack of information. And many times, lack of information in an item 19 means lack of good results. Founders aren't proud of their numbers, so they don't put them in, or they're getting bad advice along the way. That's my personal opinion. What say you?
So yeah, interesting. I got an interesting comment for people to kind of think about. So a lot of times when we're on these calls and we're talking to them about how they set up the franchise system, how they set up the franchise agreement, what their fee structure is, and the item 5, 6, 7. What I think that like is really important is that brands need to understand that FDDs and franchise agreements are evolving and they're changing constantly based on things that are dictated in the marketplace today, right? And I think what happens is when a brand goes to a franchise attorney and says, hey, I want to become a franchise, or I'm up for renewal, I think a lot of times the law firms are kind of looking at the body of work that they've done before and kind of start that with today, but maybe they're not caught up as much with what's actually happening in the marketplace around franchise development, around where the brand wants to be in 5 years or 10 years. So that's kind of how we think about providing advisory around, we're not lawyers, right? So we can't practice law here, but advisory around how to think about crafting your agreements and your FDD around where you're going, not where you are today or where you've been. And so that's where I think we can provide the most value when we take a look at their agreement and their FDD. Most of the time, we are dealing with the here and now and what's in the past. And I think that that's sometimes kind of like how the lawyers kind of craft these things. But we want to think about where is the brand going in the future, and how can we help advise the brands and or their attorneys on potentially thinking about this or that and kind of baking that in. And that's what's going to make that agreement and that FDD cutting edge and ready to go to market. Because, look, I think that at the end of the day, one thing that we've talked about in a lot of different podcasts is right sizing the fee structure. At the end of the day, franchisees want to be supported. And that's going, and how they are supported today is different than how they were supported in the past. And a lot of that is around technology. A lot of that is around tools. And a lot of that is around kind of like thinking differently about how you set up the fee structure in item 5 and 6, so that the franchisor can be healthy in order to provide the level of support necessary for the franchisee to really be successful. Because what you just commented is correct. How you launch is how you perform. If you launch here, it's a struggle to get, if the whole system is here and you launch low, it's a grind to get up there. If you launch the right way, then that's typically how you're going to perform. And so we want to make sure on the front end that there's proper budgeting around making sure that the franchisee can be successful. I mean, one category that I'm talking about here is around like grand opening marketing. I think that in the last 10 years, the budgets for grand opening marketing with a lot of franchise systems were, $5,000 to $10,000. You got to think more about grand openings than, it's not bringing in the mayor and balloons. Grand opening is no longer a day or a weekend. Grand opening is a ramp to when you launch, and it's beyond the launch, right? To get traction in your business. I think of grand opening today as like a 4 to 6 month venture. So let's put some real capital behind that. Because also in an item 7, when you're thinking about the initial investment, is how much capital are you going to need for the first 3 months of operations, right? So if you come in and you have a line item that says, hey, we're going to budget $5,000 to $10,000 for grand opening, but we're going to need $50,000 to $150,000 of working capital in the first 3 months. Let's rearrange those numbers a little bit, right? Let's put $50,000 on the grand opening line, which means that hopefully you're going to come out of the blocks faster and get traction faster and might need less working capital. So it can end up being the same amount. It's just rearranging the number, and it's rearranging the mindset of how you want to launch, because how you launch is how you're going to perform.
I just did a session in the franchisor mastermind, which by the way is only $500 a month. And we give a ton of great content in there. And we did a session on grand opening, how to help your franchisees have a great grand opening. I had a special guest in there who's a specialist in talking about this. So if you're interested in a mastermind like that, that's super inexpensive, check out scalablefranchise.com and you'll see the different masterminds that I offer. But I was thinking, back to some of the conversations we have with these emerging brands, and they are proud of their low fee structure. Maybe they're not charging a marketing fee. Maybe they are not charging or charging minimal technology fees. And, a number of different fees, they are not charging very much. And they feel good about that because their franchisees feel good about that. And then we ask them, what does great marketing support look like? What does great technology stack look like in your brand? And they start going on and saying, oh, we could do this, that, and the other. Well, how are you going to pay for that? Well, we don't have the funds right now. We would need to charge a technology fee. We would need to actually bill the marketing fee. And so franchisees out there, you hear me talk like this and you may think your brand, and it might be true, but you think your brand right now that you're a franchisee of, that's a slush fund for them. Well, that may or may not be true. But these conversations that Jeff and I have with these emerging brands, that is a critical fee for the franchisor to provide great support. And that's what separates some of the weaker brands from some of the better emerging brands, is they charge some of these fees and they over deliver. You know, that's just the beginning of what they're doing from a technology stack or marketing. Because some of our own brands, Jeff, they will contribute way above and beyond to that infrastructure with a little bit of support from the franchisees, right?
I mean, yeah. Like there's when I think of, like, you know, technology is a great example now. I mean, the purpose of technology today in a business is twofold. Number one, it's supposed to drive unit level performance. I mean, the purpose of it is to help you drive top line revenue, right? At the same time, technology is also in place to optimize the business and optimize the expenses of the business, meaning lowering the cost to operate the business through technology versus people. Like, that's the idea, right? So today I think of, like, technology as what we want to build for the franchisees of these systems are real operating systems, so that, like, it's kind of like a pilot getting into a jet fighter, right? It's ready to go. It's weaponized. It's gassed up. It's ready to go, and you have to take the controls and fly it, right? So how that kind of translates is every business is going to need some level of technology around if you're in the service industry, right? You have to book services. You have to pay for services. It's going to have some kind of CRM component, right? It's going to have some kind of marketing component. As you build out a franchise system, each franchisee is going to have some kind of web development around their particular location, like a micro type site, right? So I think a lot of times what happens is from a franchisor perspective, you're like, okay, maybe there's one existing platform that can kind of do everything, but chances are you're probably going to need more than one platform. And so you say, okay, hey, we use this particular platform for marketing and engagement and lead acquisition. We have this that's kind of like our point of sale system or our operating type software. And there's a fee associated with this and that. I mean, all software today is kind of built on a SaaS platform, software as a service. And so there's some kind of monthly fee. What we want from a franchisor to do, though, is these systems, if there's multiple systems, they need to be able to communicate together, especially around, like, if there's multiple pieces around finance and accounting. Like, if one's holding the customer and the other's holding the transactions from an accounting standpoint, they have to communicate together. Otherwise, you're doing everything manual. But to go from just providing software to a franchisee to having an integrated solution that takes multiple pieces of software and stitches it together, now that's an operating system. But paying just the monthly fee doesn't get you that integration piece. And so when we think about putting together an operating system, there has to be some budgets that are put towards taking any form of technology in the stack and stitching it together like a quilt and building out a full operating system. And so when we talk to brands about that, they're like, heck yeah, that's what I want. And we're like, okay, great. Well, that's going to take time, money, and energy. And then it's like, well, where's that going to come from? I'm already taking all of the royalty that we have coming in, and that's going out. I had to build out a leadership team for that. I had to work with marketing agencies for that. I had to redo my website. Like, there's no more juice that we can squeeze out of the orange here. And it's like, okay, this is what we want. Now, so if we go to a potential franchisee and we say, okay, there is a monthly technology fee, right? And this is a pass-through for us, but this is the technology that we use. And so look, there's 4 or 5 different pieces here. We put it together, and let's just say that the technology fee is $500 a month. What we want to do though is take that and integrate it together and provide you an operating system that is unique to our business, that all communicates together. It becomes the central nervous system of how you operate your business. So in addition to the monthly technology fee, when you come into the system, there is a business management system one-time fee per franchisee that goes into the ongoing development and evolution of our operating system, right? This is going to be something that we provide you that makes your business more efficient. By marrying all this together, the benefits are twofold. One, it's going to help you drive top line revenue and drive unit level performance. And number two, it's going to decrease costs because it allows you to operate with less people on the team. And so that's an example of thinking about how to right size your fee structure and be thoughtful of having the right tools for the franchisees. And it's like, look, this is the point of differentiation between us and other franchise systems in our category, but then also between us and all the competition in your market that isn't a franchise, right? This is IP for our business. And I think that translates when you communicate like, hey, this isn't just about adding a fee. So for fee's sake, this is about adding a fee so that we can be different, that we can be bigger and faster and stronger than the next guy that you're going to compete with.
So as you listen to this, and that was a great explanation of everything, because franchise buyers are always wondering, why am I paying this fee? Why am I paying this fee? That's the question to be asking is, what's the ROI on this fee, on this one-time fee, on this ongoing fee that I get? What's my return on investment? And if you ask the franchisor and they just say, we just need to charge this because it's for the system, it's for the system that we give you, that's probably not good enough. What Jeff just described, it's cutting costs, helping you increase revenue. That's ROI. So go back and listen to the last 5 minutes of this again, because this is, Jeff just described the ROI that you should be hearing from the franchisor. Now, because there are some out there where it's a slush fund. They're not providing real value for it. So you need to understand what the value is and then validate that value is actually happening. So that was really good. People need to go back and listen to that again if they want to understand how to validate a franchise that they're thinking about buying, or even understand the value that they're getting out of their current franchisor. All right, man, I'm out of here. I'm going to go hit the slopes. Good seeing you.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.